Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production, Snare Spotlight Day. Haven't done one of these in a while, but we could not do this one. This is the John J.R. Robinson signature drum from ASBA. Okay, there's a lot to talk about with this drum, and we're going to get into all of it, but up front, just a few specs so that you know what you're listening to when we start to get into these sounds. This drum is 8 inches deep and 14 inches in diameter. It's comprised of a 3-ply poplar maple shell with beechwood re-rings. It features slightly rounded over 45-degree bearing edges on both top and bottom, and it's finished in a chocolate stain throughout. Now, getting into what makes this drum particularly unique is the tuning system, or rather the lug system. It's comprised of a rail around the center of the drum and then modular lugs that can be moved and positioned any way you like in any number that you would like. Both the rail attachment at the base of the lugs and the claw on top are such that we can slide them around the rail and the rim easily so that we can position them however we like. Another fun aside little feature that wasn't immediately noticeable to me is that it comes with the drum key, and it includes a little rubber grommet inside of the vent hole on the side of the drum so that you can mount the drum key in there and never be without it. For today's demo, we decided to start with the most run-of-the-mill setup that we could do with this drum, which is 10 lugs on the top, 10 lugs on the bottom, evenly spaced, tuned like a drum, so we can start with this as a baseline and then deviate ever increasingly from that. As we try to do whenever possible, we utilize the setup in terms of heads and wires and such that come with the drum when it arrives to us, and we did the same today. This drum did show up with a coated Emperor 2-ply batter on there, which wouldn't necessarily have been our first choice, but we were pleasantly surprised to discover that it handled the range of this drum beautifully and had no complaints whatsoever. Now, setting aside all of the lug acrobatics that we're going to dive into in a minute, if this is the sound that this drum made, we would already consider it to be one of the best sounding snare drums that we've had in the studio at all. It's a phenomenal instrument. The fit and finish are immaculate. Everything about it screams class and beauty, but then what's under the hood is even more insane. Now, as an aside, if you happen to not be familiar with John J.R. Robinson, he is maybe, some would argue, the most recorded drummer ever. And he's played on hits that you've definitely heard probably today on the radio. So it's suffice to say, this is a versatile, highly sought after musician who likes a versatile instrument. And I can't think of a more fitting drum for someone that makes the amount of different kinds of music he does, and also at the rate that he does. Now, to get into that exact versatility that we're talking about, let's dive into the possibilities here. To kick it off, the most extreme experiment I could think of in this moment, taking some lugs off the bottom, putting them on the top, and giving us 14 on the top and 6 on the bottom. First thing to note about this tuning is that we didn't make any adjustments to the tuning of the snare side head apart from removing those 4 lugs. We simply took them off, moved them to the top, shifted them around so they were relatively even, and then went after a relatively high tuning on the batter head because having more lugs distributes that tension and generally makes for a really great sound at higher tunings. Now, with this instrument versus, say, a 6-lug drum, we also can, as we have, moved the lugs around so they aren't even evenly spaced, which is opening up a whole new world of possibilities that are going to get increasingly bananas as we go through the next set of tunings. Because of this really high number of lugs on the batter head, we're able to get this higher tuning without having to crank down any particular lug on this drum. What that means is that the feel of the head still has a nice cushy quality to it, even though it's cranked up. And then that, mixed with the depth of this drum, gives us crack, gives us clarity, gives us articulation, and also a nice amount of body underneath. Next up is probably what I would use a drum like this most for, and that is simply converting it from a larger number of lugs to a smaller number of lugs, but evenly on top and bottom. We decided to go for 6 and 6. If you've ever seen any of our very old Pioneer drums and things like that we have here, 6-lug drums are super fun. They're a real different sound, and they handle low tunings in a very specific way that's super fun. For the 6-lug setting on the snare side head, we didn't go to the trouble of evenly spacing those lugs as well because we frankly just wanted to see what would happen, and we had great results. To our ears here, this immediately ages this drum older and crunchier and takes us to New Orleans, takes us to blues, takes us to the Delta, all of that kind of thing. Again, same drum, same heads. The tuning, frankly, isn't even that dramatically different. We just tuned it down a little bit. It's not extreme. It's just a lower tuning. But by virtue of the lug setup, we have a completely different energy coming out of this drum. One of the great things about utilizing less lugs on the batter head is that we use more tension to achieve a similar pitch than we would if we were using 10 lugs. And that means for us that we don't have to worry about them backing out. We can use a lower pitch overall on the drum, but have much more pressure at each lug point. Stays in tune better. Now, for those of you listening who feel like this is really raspy and full of overtones and sustain and crazy stuff going on, we want to give you a quick back-to-back of the raw sound and then a slightly EQ'd and compressed version, which is along the lines of what we would do if we were just doing a little bit of production to sweeten it up. So as you can hear, having all of that stuff going on in there, all of that character, is beautiful, and with a little bit of massaging, you can really push it around and take it to the place that you want it to be without diving into a lot of muffling. Now, before we go any further, we want to tell you a few things about this company and their super fascinating history. ASBA, or ASBA as we've heard it said as well, is a French drum builder that's been around for almost 100 years and was, surprisingly to us, a very, very profound innovator in the early days of both percussion in general and the drum set as we know it. Early on, in addition to working with percussion instruments and things of that nature, they had a big footprint in the accessories department for all instruments, stands in particular. Some other innovations of theirs include the concept of the dual adjustment snare strainer system, being able to do tension from both sides, as well as the hopefully making a comeback Caroline bass drum pedal. The company ran into both manufacturing and competition issues in the 80s and were forced to close their doors, but recently they have been revitalized. They started doing things in 2016, became officially out there in the world again in 2017, and are redefining what it means to be innovative about drums. And now we've saved our favorite for the end. We wanted to go after a low, dead, almost snom kind of sound, and wanted to see if we can do it with no muffling. If you've seen our previous video about some extreme tuning scenarios where you don't have even tension on the batter head in the past, this is a perfect instrument to experiment with uneven tension, because we can place, again, the lugs wherever we want. And if we want to have, say, 4 lugs on the batter but all on one side, we can have that. For this, albeit extreme tuning, what we did is 8 lugs on the bottom, not evenly spaced. They're spaced as you would with a 10 lug, but then with the outer 2 away from the wires removed. Then for the batter, we took everything off and we evenly spaced 4 away from me on the far side of the drum, resulting in tension only on that side and some pretty extreme wrinkles on my side. The end result here is that we're driving low end into the wires. We're getting a fat, punchy sound with absolutely no sustain because we don't have tension evenly around the edge of the batter head. This is a little bit of a quieter sound. You have to hit it a little bit harder, but on the other hand, it gives us a beautiful, compressed, punchy kind of new wave sample situation going on that made us so happy we had to include it. It was sort of an accident that we even fell on it. Ben was across the room and he said, "Stop, whatever that is, leave it alone, that's amazing." And that's exactly where the fun is in an instrument like this. We were joking around about how we would explain this to someone who wasn't a drummer, because we have plenty of friends who aren't. And this is a chemistry set. This is all the options in front of you, instructions for things you could do, but also the sky's the limit. Do whatever you want. Find exactly what makes you happy. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to take the drum apart. It's ready to go. It has all the options. And honestly, I haven't had goosebumps about a snare drum in a really long time, and it wasn't even how beautiful it was when it showed up that got me excited. It was when I started messing with the system that I realized, like, this is actually a new thing in a world where we rarely see new things. Now, this is a professional instrument geared toward professionals. It costs some money. It is worth it. I'm telling you right now, this is an absolute pinnacle of versatility and also experimentation, which is absolutely our favorite thing to do around here. And as we said earlier, it's not often that something comes along under the guise of a snare drum that actually offers you something genuinely new, genuinely inspirational, and doesn't have much Venn diagram crossover with anything else that we've ever played. Oftentimes when we see something that is genuinely innovative, or at least couched that way, the first thing that we notice is the concessions that are being made to allow that innovation to exist in that instrument. And this is one of the first ones that we've seen which is sacrificing nothing in favor of gaining everything. In our industry and most industries, the word versatility has been rendered almost meaningless because it's used to describe everything. Everything's versatile. Everything can do everything. Simply not true. However, with this instrument, it actually has the capacity to replace several snare drums in a collection, do the job of many drums, and cover, as far as I'm concerned, any sound that I would need on any gig that I can think of needing to do. And I don't say that lightly. I do a lot of different kinds of gigs, but because of the design of this drum, it literally is all the drums that I could possibly need. If you'd like to learn more about ASBA and everything else that they do in addition to this drum, follow the link below, check out their website, and if you want to see one in person, check out one of their dealers, including our favorite one, Wooden Weather up in Massachusetts. Fabulous place, fabulous collection, and I tell you, once you lay sticks on one of these, you're going to be changed.